Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand what it means, the entire statue turns into something completely different. Her name is Pudicizia, sometimes called Modesty, sometimes the Veiled Truth. She was carved by Antonio Corradini, a Venetian sculptor who spent his life perfecting one impossible trick, making solid stone look like soft, breathable fabric. He finished her in 1752, the same year he died, and she now stands in the San Severo Chapel, just a few steps from her far more famous neighbor, the Veiled Christ. At first glance, she looks like exactly what every guidebook tells you she is. A woman, life-sized, standing with her weight shifted onto one leg. A veil drapes over her entire body, from the top of her head to her ankles, carved so thin and so precise that it seems to cling to her skin like wet silk. Through the stone, you can trace her collarbone. You can see the soft curve of her stomach. You can follow the line of her thigh beneath what looks like real cloth. For centuries, people have read her as a simple allegory, virtue, purity, the idea of modesty given a human shape. That reading isn't wrong, but it isn't the whole story either, because Corradini didn't carve idle decoration. By the time this commission landed on his table, he was in his 60s, with nearly 4 decades of experience turning marble into illusion. Every fold, every angle, every object in this composition was a decision, not an accident. Start with the silhouette. Her body tilts gently, leaning into a broken column behind her, and the veil drops in one long, continuous line from her scalp to her feet. Your eye can't help but follow that vertical sweep. The pose itself is closed, arms crossed over her chest. One hand pressed to her side, the other curled around a small object we'll get to in a moment. There's nothing open or relaxed about her stance. It reads as guarded, protective, almost like she's holding herself together. Then there's the veil, which is the part everyone talks about, and for good reason. It might be the single most technically impossible piece of stone carving in Western sculpture. Corradini shaved the marble down to near transparency over the high points of her face and body, so that depending on where light hits it, the fabric seems to glow, dim, ripple. Walk a full circle around her and the illusion never breaks. Not once does the stone reveal itself as stone. Behind her, that broken column deserves more attention than it usually gets. She isn't standing freely. She's leaning against a tall stone pillar that's been snapped off at the top, as though it once continued upward and simply stopped. In the visual language of 18th century sculpture, a broken column wasn't decoration. It was shorthand for a life interrupted, something that should have kept going and didn't. Corradini placed her against that broken shape on purpose. Almost nobody asks why, and here's a detail most visitors walk straight past without registering. The entire figure, the body, the veil, the column, the base, was carved from a single unbroken block of marble. Not assembled, not layered. One piece of stone hollowed and shaped from the outside inward until a body and a sheet of fabric somehow emerged from the same solid mass. Now, the hand. In her left hand, pressed lightly against her hip, she's holding something small and easy to overlook. A flat, rectangular tablet with jagged, broken edges, as if it had once been part of something larger that shattered. Faint lettering runs across its surface, worn down, incomplete. Most people glance at it for a second, maybe less, before their eyes drift back up to the veil. But that tiny broken tablet is the key that unlocks everything. In the 1700s, a broken inscribed plaque carried a meaning that any educated visitor would have recognized instantly. It was the visual signature of a gravestone, a fragment of a funerary inscription, the kind of carved text you'd find on a tomb. Placing that object in a figure's hand wasn't symbolic flourish. It meant one specific thing. This wasn't an abstract personification of virtue. This was a portrait of someone who had actually died. There's a second clue too, carved into the base beneath her feet. So easy to miss that most photographs of the statue don't even include it. It's a small relief depicting a scene from the Gospel of John, the moment the risen Christ tells Mary Magdalene not to touch him. A scene fundamentally about reaching for someone you've lost and being told you can't have them back. Corradini didn't tuck that scene in at random. He placed it directly under the veiled woman's feet, like a quiet footnote to everything above it. And that's where the real story begins. This statue wasn't a routine church commission, paid for by some anonymous patron with conventional taste. It was ordered by Raimondo di Sangro, the Prince of Sanzavero, for the family chapel he was transforming into one of the strangest, most mysterious tombs anywhere in Europe. And the woman beneath that veil was his mother. Her name was Cecilia. She died in 1710, less than a year after giving birth to him. Raimondo never knew her face, never heard her voice, never carried a single memory of her because he was too young to have formed one before she was gone. More than 4 decades later, as a grown man with the resources of a prince, he commissioned a sculptor to give her a face he had never actually seen. Once you know that, nothing about this statue reads the same way again. The veil stops being a showpiece of technical bravado and becomes a mourning veil, the kind that would have covered a widow or a body in death. The crossed arms aren't modesty anymore, they're grief held in. The broken tablet in her hand isn't a generic prop. It's a fragment of her own gravestone, literally placed in her stone fingers. And that quiet relief at her feet of Christ telling Mary Magdalene not to touch him becomes the prince's own confession, that no matter how perfectly he rendered her in marble, he could never actually bring her back. It's a son's imagined portrait of a mother he never met, built entirely out of guesswork, longing, and craftsmanship. But there's a second story that has clung to this statue for centuries, and it refuses to die. Raimondo di Sangro wasn't only a grieving son, he was an alchemist, a Freemason, and a figure so notorious for his strange experiments that the Vatican itself reportedly took an interest in his activities while he was alive. Legend claims he could transform real fabric into stone, that the veil isn't carved marble at all, but the result of some chemical process performed in a laboratory beneath the chapel. Modern analysis has settled the question. It's a single block of hand-carved marble, full stop. But legends rarely care about evidence, and this one never went away. In that version of the story, the statue stops being about Cecilia altogether. It becomes about her son, the prince who stationed his veiled mother at the chapel entrance like a sentinel. A man more interested in mystery and power than mourning. 2 completely different readings, both sitting inside the exact same image. And Corradini carving this in the final months of his own life, working for a patron famous for burying layers of meaning into everything he touched, almost certainly intended for both readings to survive. More than 270 years later, the Veiled Modesty is still one of the most argued over sculptures in European art, not despite that small broken tablet in her hand, but because of it. Corradini didn't just carve a beautiful illusion, he carved a question that's still waiting for an answer.